Let's talk about this idea of balance that everybody thinks is important to work on, and it is. But let's think of it, in this case, I've got a balanced board with a single plane fulcrum. And I want to really talk about progression. Because when I started using this thing, 30 years ago, literally, after physical therapy school, it's important, and so what do you do? Well, you put people on it and say balance. We'd have people doing all this stuff. It got progressively harder and harder, and then during the course of the therapy, we'd bring out the board, and they'd be like, oh man, that thing? And it's like, this is one of the easiest things you do. Yet they go, yes, but it's not like I'm gonna sweat or anything, but it's so frustrating. And I started thinking about it, and I realized, it dawned on me that, you know why it's frustrating for them? Because I literally told them the first thing to do was the end goal, the toughest thing to do. Literally, as if somebody walked in here to get better at their bench press, and they could only do 150 pounds a day. So I put 300 on the bar and said, bench press this, you'll get to where you can do it. That's the same poor progression that we do when we tell somebody to get on a balance board and balance. And especially when we have something that moves and it has more degrees of freedom than just one. Something that tilts and moves in 360, and something that's also squishy and all that. If we don't understand progressing degrees of freedom at all, and we don't understand progressing the teaching of this stuff. So why don't we think of progression as not start with the hardest, but maybe start with what you can do. What do you think someone could probably do on this thing? How about wobble? So let's have them wobble. And if you'll notice in the beginning, the way to wobble, for a lot of people it's easiest, is they'll actually take their center of mass from one side to the other. So let them do that. And try to get to where it's not all jolty and abrupt. But then the next thing you're going to need to decide, before you tell them to wobble another way, you're going to decide what you want them to wobble with. That's right, it's just not a matter of doing it and seeing what happens, because I have two choices. I'm going to try to keep my center, my mass, more centered, and I'm going to start wobbling by changing the tension, the pressure, the pushing in my lower extremity. That is, if I keep my knees slightly bent, it becomes a squat type of control. If I lock my knees, and some of you are going, don't lock your knees, it's bad for them. We need to talk about that, because softly locking my knees, putting them in the closed back position, is not going to hurt anybody. Abruptly tossing them there, throwing them there, inertia, pushing them into extension beyond zero, having a bunch of weight piled on top of them so you can do tricep bench dips, those things we can talk about not doing. This, don't worry about it. So lock them, remove that joint from the scenario, and then if I control it from side to side, I'm doing it with my hips and my spine. It's not the same thing. In fact, I may have to actually put something, magazines, something under each side here, because my range of available motion doing it that way is dramatically reduced from if I'm sitting here doing it in a squat type position. So we can't assume those are the same things, and we need to change, adjust the challenge in terms of range appropriately, right? So what are they doing when they're doing this version here? Well, they again are wobbling it side to side, but they're just not taking their center of mass so much that way. And then the goal is what? Slow the wobble. So we literally have them try to slow it, don't try to stop it, but just slowly change the amount of pressure from side to side. And you know what eventually happens? They nail it. And then they go, yeah, I did it. And then they're going to do it. They're going to get on it next time, and they're going to go try to balance, and they won't be able to do it. This progression from controlled wobble to slow wobble to no wobble is really important. And a lot of people you work with may never get past the slow controlled wobble. That's still major, major progression. A couple other things I need to say. A prerequisite to all of this is having all of these muscles functioning with a degree of integrity. Because I can't use what I don't have available. I can't build solutions to this challenge with contractions that don't exist or don't produce enough horsepower, if you will, output, to get the job done. And this is a skill. It's not the best place to improve the operational status of the components required in the skill. Couple more things on progression. It's funny to me that we're always setting up balancing scenarios symmetrically, same distance from the fulcrum. A lot of people by doing that think, well, if I can balance, that means my legs are the same strength. No, it doesn't at all. Because all it means is your brain has orchestrated the output from one to be similar to the output of the other. That doesn't mean that your maximum from each leg are even close to each other. That doesn't even make any sense. This is not a 1 rep max scenario, right? Another thing is, why don't we change from that? What if we actually moved somebody in just a little bit on one side and then had them work on the controlled wobble thing again, right? Wasn't that going to create an asymmetry? No, it's going to create a different version of the skill, where I can still be in control of me and the board while producing different forces. Well, why would they ever want to do that? I don't want to call, I'll give you an example in real life where that might happen, like all the time. We so rarely function symmetrically. But think about, people love golfers. Let's think about golfers. So you think Tiger Woods, while balance is important for him and control from left to right, you think he's always standing on this nice flat grass with a little tee in front of him? Or is he occasionally dealing with wind that might actually be changing which side, as gusts come along, he's got more pressure on? What if he's actually standing on something that's sloped? He may never have done that when he was a kid, but now that he's older, he might end up in the rough more often. So he's on something that's not flat anymore. He's still got to be able to control this stuff. In fact, the motor learning experts tell us that honed skill, high level function, high level skilled performance by someone like a Tiger Woods or a Michael Jordan is not about this perfect motor pattern recruitment thing that we were taught. These guys actually have more variance in their ability to come up with solutions, which is why they can do amazing things in every scenario on the court or out there on the golf course. It's very different from what we were originally taught. And this ability to do skilled, awesome things in a variety of different scenarios is what it's all about. So it makes a lot of sense to do that to both sides and work on the side-to-side wobble and play those games. This is all about progression. Understanding the mechanics of what we're trying to stimulate the body with and how to best progress our clients to maybe being able to master some of this stuff. That's really the way to get them where they want to go.